Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's event. My name is Lisa Wymore, and I'm the facilitator, the facilitator and the faculty advisor for Berkeley Arts and Design, which is part of the Creative Discovery Initiative here at UC Berkeley. I'm so glad that you're all with us tonight in this stormy night here in Berkeley. Tonight's event is a talk given by Asa Benally, entitled Designing for the Indigenous Theater. This event is co-presented by UC Berkeley's Department of Theater, Dance, and Performance Studies and the Berkeley Center for New Media's Indigenous Technologies Speaker Series. This Monday speaker series is supported by the Office of Berkeley Arts and Design, which connects and fortifies creative departments and units throughout the Berkeley campus. Funds for these talks are made possible by generous philanthropic donations. Unique to the speaker series is its connection to a course called Humanities 20, which is offered through the Division of Arts and Humanities. 50 students are enrolled in this class and attend our weekly talks. So welcome, students, once again. So glad that you're here. And this semester's theme is perseverance, renewal, and reflection. We are providing captioning for this event, and you can activate this at the bottom of your Zoom webinar window. If you have any other access issues, you can post that into the chat and we will respond as best we can. For questions specifically related to the talk, please post those in the question and answer feature. Before we begin tonight, let us recognize that tonight's event is located in the territory of Huichin, the ancestral and unceded lands of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone peoples, and specifically the successors of the sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County and the confederated villages of Lashan. The history of prolific artistic and technological development in this region has always depended on this land. I'm going to make special note tonight of the 150,000 acres of indigenous land that funded the University of California through the Morrill Act of 1862. This expropriation is intricately tied to California's unique history of native dispossession. The presenters of tonight's event in Berkeley are committed to supporting the sovereignty and ongoing stewardship of this place by Ohlone peoples through building long-term reciprocity and relationship building with tribal leaders and organizations. I would like to now introduce Asa Benally. Asa Benally is a Drama Desk nominated costume designer. He was raised in Big Mountain, Arizona, on the unceded lands of the Navajo Nation. His grandmother, a traditional Navajo weaver, and his father, a silversmith, fostered his love and appreciation for art and design. His mother, of the Cherokee Nation, a professor and writer, expanded his love of academia and the arts. Asa went on to study at Parsons School of Design in New York City. He completed his M.F.A. in theater design at Yale University. Asa's design aesthetic is derived from an interest in history and strong individuals. He is based in New York City and works throughout the US on theater productions, opera, musical theater, and within educational and academic settings. Some questions to consider for tonight's talk. What does it mean to consider design from an Indigenous eye? How do we design an Indigenized space within the US American theater? Asa will share some information about his creative processes and share the complex nuances surrounding appropriation versus appreciation within his art making. And throughout the presentation, Asa and I will be in conversation. I'll be present during the presentation to come in with questions throughout, and then we'll have a little bit more discussion at the end, and then open it up for the question and answer period. So I'd like to now welcome Asa Benally. Thank you.
Hello. There I am on the screen. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming out and joining us for this presentation and this talk. And yeah. Should we get right into the presentation?
We're so glad that you're here, Asa. And yeah, maybe we'll start with the presentation unless you wanted to open it up with some questions about Berkeley or department or anything like that. Happy to start how you like.
Oh, I didn't prepare any questions.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's fine. That's fine. Why don't you just begin?
But,
we can talk as we go, as things come up.
All right. My disclaimer is always, as a designer, learning to, I guess, talk about myself and my process is kind of really a new thing that's been like brought on by the pandemic.
Yeah.
Since I've, for a time had like stopped working. So I think, the theme of tonight, the whole aspect of reflection really has, I think, been the definitive word for the past about 2 years. Because usually when you get into the thick of things and you're doing like 4 shows at once, I mean, the last thing you're doing is reflecting on one's process and oneself and like one's own sort of relationship with your art. And so early on in the pandemic there was definitely a lot of dusting off like the old sketchbooks or looking at old photographs and really having that reflective moment of like realizing the things that have led me to be a theater artist, and then in tandem with that realizing how my Indigenous upbringing really kind of like created the foundation for sort of like where I ended up today. So
well, we're so excited to learn more and see your presentation, your images that you've shared with us, that you will share with us.
Yeah, I have, of course, anyone can, look at my website after this, but I did a lot of the work that I'm showing today is, part of it's like my personal history, my personal journey, but then also sort of like the more profound, Indigenous work that I've been able to be a part of, really starting since 2016. Because, as we sort of chatted about earlier, that was, the year when I first worked with any other Indigenous artist in my career. Up until that point, I think I'd, been working for at least like 15 years as a costume designer.
Wow, that's pretty profound.
Yeah, so that project is in our presentation, so we can chat about that.
And I wanted to say, students too, the ASA's website is in the B Courses site, and we'll be sure to post the website link in the chat as well if people wanted to also. Your website's really beautiful how you've organized it, and I love those reflections, those kind of diary posts that you have in there with the images. Yeah, it's really great to read that.
Yeah, I need to kind of like keep up with that, but I definitely wanted to.
But it really gives you insight into your process.
Yeah, I really wanted, because people are, I never know who's looking at my website, but usually when people contact me, it's like, for a job or just to like have a chat. But everyone always kind of mentions like the designer diary, and I'm like, okay, I thought it was a crazy idea to kind of put it in there, but
it reminds me of this process. There's this company in Chicago called Code Island, and they teach at the art. They teach various art classes, and one of their reflections was to do these kind of daily diaries with an image like that. It reminded me of an artistic practice. So yeah, it's great to see.
I would definitely like to put in more stuff about my process, because I think there was more stuff about things that I just kind of noticed, or, little like, oh, wait, that's interesting. I never thought of that, or, stuff like that. But let's see.
Great.
Let me. All right. Does everyone see that? Are we good to?
Yes, this looks great.
Okay. So in the vein of David Copperfield, slide one, I am born, childhood. I grew up in the Navajo Nation in northern Arizona on a disputed piece of territory. We won't get into that whole political social history. But growing up in this area, I mean, you kind of just like, you know, this is a picture of me and my grandmother. And, you know, the background was, you know, my playground. And, you know, as my aunt started having, you know, more kids, I got more playmates. So yeah, having this sort of be the foundation, infinite space, sort of like infinite freedom, was, you know, in hindsight, I'm just like, this is where it started. Because, you know, we're in a space where there isn't a lot of, you know, resources or distractions. It's like, you can't go to like, you know, the McDonald's play place, or there's no playground. It's like the playground is just like nature. And so like in hindsight, I kind of realized, well, yeah, it's like you're in this place where if you wanted something, you kind of had to make it, or you had to sort of invent it, whether that's like making up games, you know. And in terms of like the landscape, there were always like, you know, like I can tell you, knowing where this valley is, it's like up here is like this whole cluster of rocks, and that's like kind of like where we would go and sort of like play house, or it would be like a castle, or, you know, something. There were just sort of these clusters of rocks and boulders, and we would just kind of like use that as our playground. And these are just some images. Let's see, here's me giving my best Farrah Fawcett impression. And then, you know, we had a lot of animals as well. So then, you know, there's sort of, we always grew up, you know, taking care of sheep or sheep herding. And these are my grandparents up here at the, you know, winter sheep corral. And sort of like looking through these, you know, old photographs, just kind of like seeing like, you know, all of like the color and sort of like traditional design that was just like inherent, that just was like there growing up, really made me realize that, you know, color, like just made me more perceptive of color. You know, my first color theory classes were, you know, spending time with my grandmother, like learning how to, you know, bead jewelry. And or having her, you know, dye wool for rug weaving. And, you know, of course, one of the staples of, you know, the traditional Navajo wardrobe is velvet, you know, these printed cottons and this like turquoise jewelry. So I kind of like realized that I grew up like so much around all of this, you know, color, all of this sort of like design language.
Do you have a favorite memory of your grandmother?
I think
So many.
I know there is some. I think one of the memories, and I think like any, you know, Navajo child who grew up with like a, you know, traditional grandmother, is like the skirts, because it's like when you'd run over, you know, when you wanted to sort of like, you could just envelop yourself in the you know, the skirts. And
That's beautiful.
and somebody told me, they're like, yeah, like a standard, you know, Navajo women's skirt is at least like 16 yards. If it's like a cotton, it's like 16 yards of just like gathered and, you know, or pleated fabric. And so I was like, okay. And so I just kind of remember, you know, running up to her, and you just kind of like grab them and you just be like, okay, nobody can bother me, or I'm safe. I'm like cocooned. And,
And it must have been the feel of the fabric too, the texture of it too, as you came into it, to feel that on your skin.
Yeah. And by the time I was like a kid, you know, I think my grandmother, she had like stopped making like clothes. But, you know, when I went to Parsons, it was like, you know, one of my aunts was like, oh yeah, like, you know, she used to make all of her own clothes. Like she used to make clothes for everyone for like ceremonies or, you know, all this stuff. And I was like, what? Like I had no idea. Like I have this distinct memory of she had one of those old like pedal singer machines, and I never saw her use it because I think by that time, you know, she'd moved on from, you know, making things. But I would sit underneath it and like I would push that pedal, and it was like a game to like see how fast you could push it, because then the wheel would like really like start turning,
Whizzing.
yeah, like right next to it. If anyone's familiar with like those old like pedal machines, and so it's kind of like, once again, it's sort of like this thing, it's like, well, it's sort of like not this arbitrary thing that, you know, I do what I do, that I work with like fabric and clothes, and, you know, that I studied fashion design. And I think for me, that kind of like gives me, I guess, more of like a sense of being grounded, you know, especially in a profession where there aren't a lot of, you know, Indigenous theater makers, and people are always kind of sort of like, you know, unintentionally or maybe intentionally like questioning like, oh, how did you end up here? Like, how did that, you know? But, you know, in every Native community and Native households, it's, you know, one thing that I realized is that there's always creativity. There has always been creativity, you know, whether it's like jewelry making or families that, you know, participate in powwows. There's always like singing, dancing, storytelling, art, you know, creativity. You know, everybody in my family does something, you know, creative, you know, from just sketching or drawing to, you know, doing more traditional arts and crafts.
Yeah. Were you ever responsible for certain parts of a ceremony or certain aspects of ritual or family life in a certain way that was assigned to you and that you were responsible for, or given a gifting of something?
There was, you know, there were moments when we did do that, but whenever there was sort of anything happening, you know, it's like the whole family is involved somehow. And so you were never excluded just because, you know, you were like a little kid.
So you're part of this whole experience.
Yeah. And so when you're, you know, young, it's like some children like go on to learn a lot of, you know, different practices or, you know, different ceremonies, and their life kind of goes into that direction. And, you know, there's probably like, you know, a part of, you know, my family who were like thinking, oh, maybe I would do that, you know, but you had
your own ideas.
I had my own ideas of, you know, what, you know, what I wanted in life, which was like this, you know, going out and going on adventures. And one thing that was like really, so these were like a bunch of drawings I found from when I was a kid. And so either like kind of like drawing things that I like saw, because I always remember my grandmother weaving, and just these like balls of yarn, you know, like all the weaving instruments that you would kind of use to, you know, do the patterns and stuff. The spindle, I remember we always used to get in trouble because we would use these as swords, because I was like, these look like those swords you see in the movies, like the Three Musketeers. And, you know, we'd like get them and start, you know, hitting them against each other, and then we, you know, get in trouble for that. Or her like dyeing the wool. so for me, I just kind of like had this like whole fascination with like, history and like sort of like fantasy and just, uh, just this, other world sort of thing. And what was sort of like always around was National Geographic magazines. And that was, hands down, like that was like my portal into just seeing like what was like out in the world. And, sometimes you'd see things like familiar, like I remember there was probably like a photo, essay about like Afghan shepherds. And I was like, hey, that looks like, that looks like Arizona. That looks like where you're from. And, we have sheep too. Oh, cool. But then there'd be like, it's like Venice is sinking. And it's like, what is Venice? What is Italy? And then you're just seeing like all of this like visual history of all these different people's lives. So, I think that's like the main thing that has always been like this important factor in my life, was there just always being stacks of National Geographics.
Were your parents or your family and loved ones around you noticing this kind of burgeoning drawing and creativity within you, or?
Yeah, my grandmother saw it early on when I was like a toddler, and she was very protective of me being able to have this, I like to call it creative chaos. And there are just like a bunch of stories about how, when I was a kid, I'd like, I would take potatoes and then I would like stick sticks in them, and I would make like these like animals, out of these potatoes. And people like, I guess my dad was like, he was like yelling at me, like, oh my God, don't do that. Like, I'm like wasting food, like, But then my grandmother like stopped him in his tracks, and she was like, no. Like, what he's doing right now is like really important. He's developing his imagination, and he's going to need that, when he grows up. Like, she was completely, we just like, when with her blessing, it's like we were able to just, get into like so many messes, and like where you'd get yelled at by, any other parent, and she would just be like, no, this is what you want your children to be doing. You want them.
Sounds very wise and loving.
Yeah. And so even when I heard like that story, I was just like, that's part of the foundation. Like, it wasn't arbitrary. It was something that I was given like space to grow as an artist. Even like as like, a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, so yeah, she was like very, very wise.
Thanks for sharing that the origin stories there, the beginnings.
I know. I'm like, how are we on time?
Oh, really wonderful.
But that touching on the reflective, it's like I think in this like world, it's like, there's, before the pandemic, things were just like at like breakneck speed. And I think at this point in my life, it's like good to have that reminder. Like, you know what? This is what was like gifted to you. Like, this is, it just didn't come from like thin air. And so kind of when I've like, been on my own sort of, my own journey as a teacher, dipping my toe into that, I've kind of like really started to take those philosophies that, I learned from my grandmother and, try to like implement them, either with young designers or, students. So then in a way, like kind of passing on like her legacy.
Yeah. That notion that our elders are with us, even if they've journeyed on, that they're within us, or we carry on their ideas, really beautiful.
So I guess coming now to the
Now you're in New York. I love the
now I made
schlepping
it to
bag.
New York.
Yeah. But
I
go back one picture though to your schlepping. I love that you
oh
were.
yeah, I know. This was
That was great. That was so good.
this is what it comes down to. This
Yeah.
is what my life is, you know. The glamour of it all.
So what do you have in those bags? Our students would be curious. All
This
the
would
costumes,
be this was
fabric. Or,
yeah, these would be just a little bit of everything, costume pieces. This literally was from the last show that I did before the pandemic shut down, theater in New York, and then of course across the country. So unbeknownst to me, this was going to be the last show that I was going to design for a very long time. And so kind of even going back and looking at like, you know, photos of that time and just being like, wow, you know, I had no clue. None of us had any clue about like what was, you know, sort of going to happen, like how much we would be affected as creators and artists in the theater. So it's like, I look at this photo and it's like, oh, the nostalgia.
No mask, out in the world.
Yeah, probably like, yeah, jumping on the subway, you know, unmasked, no hand sanitizer.
Right. Heading into a theater with vibrant people around you and chaos and all the stuff that's accompanying getting a show open. Yeah, some of our students here might not really understand that behind the scenes kind of energy and, you know, work that it takes to put up a show.
Oh yeah, it can be a lot. So the show that I just opened here in New York was actually in the same theater complex as the show that had like shut down.
Oh wow! So you're opening up in the same complex that the last show that you did. Wow.
Yeah. So it was definitely a full circle moment.
Oh wow.
Because I remember we had to close the show early, so I had to go to, you know, the theater. It's like down in Times Square and or on 42nd Street, and it was just dead. It was like dead. I like got off the subway. It was probably the last time I didn't wear a mask on the subway, because at that time.
Right. Oh, we've lost Asa.
Last week, so it's sort of like surreal in a way, and yeah, just to kind of be like, okay, we're back, right? Like,
yeah.
Wow. And just to kind of go back where I thought it all ended, but then, you know, it's like, oh, this is like where it's starting
Again.
How are you on time? It's like 10.
Oh, we're good. Yeah.
Okay.
Good. I think it's great to hear about, you know, that kind of pivotal moment when you started to transition and making the piece that you want to talk about, Winter's Tale, and how that was such a shift in your career. If you want to dive there or talk more about making theater in New York more generally. But
yeah, so basically the Winter's Tale, like I touched on before, it was the first time in like my 15 years of working that I worked with, you know, any other Indigenous artists in the theater. And I think that kind of was sort of like bittersweet, because it was like really like, it was like so amazing to finally be able to do that. But then, you know, on the flip side, it was just sort of like, oh, it took that long.
yeah, that's just, yeah.
And to kind of just think about like, you know, as like a person of color, to think that, well, you know, now after 15, 16 years, like now it's finally happening, was kind of like, you know, mind-blowing in a way.
Yeah. What do you think caused, or what do you think was the shift, or were you feeling things changing within the theater world in New York that were opening this, or how did the opportunity arise, or how did it come about?
It was sort of like, you know, there's this, I think this like current generation of theater makers, like we all, first of all, started to kind of like find each other, because, you know, in this day and age, you know, it's so much easier than even like 10 years ago, you know, especially with everyone so connected on, you know, social media, or they're, you know, sort of being like less traditional forms of media, in terms of, you know, profile pieces or something done by whichever website, or, you know. So I had met the director, Madeline Sayat, and she'd come up to Yale because the last semester of grad school at Yale, the Yale Indigenous Performing Arts program was created.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. But also it's like my last semester here. And now
it's happening.
Now I have to like go, and, you know, but I've been able to like, you know, do different things with them. So it's been, you know, really great.
So keep a connection there.
Yeah. And so that's why that's why Madeline was up in New Haven. So we kind of just like, you know, met each other through the Yale Indigenous Community House on campus. They were like throwing an event, and it was just like, I was just like, oh my God, I have like no hours left in the day, but I have to like, you know, I have to like go, and, you know, it's like, is it true? It's like, I'm not like the only unicorn that exists. Like, so it's just kind of like making these sort of informal connections. And then she contacted me, you know, a few months later, and she was like, I had moved back to New York by that point. And she's like, I'm doing The Winter's Tale. Like, can you do the costumes? And I was like, yes. Do
you think that the institutional support, you know, of networking and bringing people together in the room was useful in that moment, or was it just kind of a serendipitous?
I think it was like
gathering, or?
Well, honestly, I mean, on one hand, it's like, you know, the Indigenous Performing Arts program was created, which was like amazing. But then it was something that was like separate from the established institutions on campus.
I see.
So it really was kind of like the informal events that became like the important thing, you know, to connect with each other.
I see.
To kind of just like start having informal conversations in the corner, like, you know, eating mix or whatever. So yeah, let's go through some.
Yeah, talk us through your designs.
I think that I mean, it was like a big show.
Yeah.
And of course, it's like in New York, even, you know, if you're working on Broadway, it's like, you know, the shows are just like, everything's coming from everywhere, you know?
Like buying from places, or
like going to like this thrift store, or going, you know, this really was, this was like around the time when like people really weren't using like Amazon or a lot of online stuff. It was like, okay, we're going out into the city streets and we're like shopping it, we're finding it, we're, you know, borrowing it, we're renting it. Like, it was just sort of like, it sort of just like came from everywhere. So there definitely was like this like aspect of timelessness, in terms of sort of like, I guess, like the indigenous aspect of the creation of this world. There was like very much this idea that, you know, it kind of needed to sort of like be timeless in a way. Maybe there's sort of like references or like, you know, nuances in the design that, you
It
know,
could be in the
had
future or the past, or
yeah. And that kind of the focus was sort of like on the performers and on the performances. So
great. Was the cast predominantly Native or Indigenous folks?
yeah.
Mhm.
So even kind of looking at like, I mean, for me, it's like, you know, when I found this shrug, I was like, oh, this reminds me of like, you know, the ribbon work that I see, like, you know, in like Seminole tribes, or like ribbon skirts from like Northern tribes, like just kind of out shopping, and you're just like, oh yeah, that, you know, or
You
playing
get
with
kind of
like,
like yeah, you get like a feeling or something, or like a like a light bulb, or like a, oh, just a drawing, like your eyes are drawn to certain things, or
yeah, or even just kind of like looking at like the old, you know, photographs from like the 1860s of how, you know, you'd see like these Native men in like the top hats, but then they'd have like their long braids, and, you know, or their hair would be down. I think that kind of whole aspect of like, look at like the pile of junk and sort of like create like the magic from that, like that's how like I grew up, and how my thought process was just like, okay, jump into this like chaotic structure, this chaotic system, and see like the possibilities in like all of these sort of like random pieces, or, you know, like realizing how like fabric and color, you know, that is so much, you know, of a storytelling element, which is something I learned as a child. And then it's like, well, that's what, you know, costume design is. It's like you choose certain things, you pair certain things, and they tell like a story. But I had like a really amazing full circle moment. So the actress here, Gloria Miguel, she was a founding member of the Spider Woman Theater Company. And I saw her perform in Northern Arizona in like 1999. And her and her sisters, who established Spider Woman Theater Company, did this like mind-blowing production. I'm gonna butcher the title, Winnetou's Snake Oil Medicine Show live from Wigwam City. So it was like this whole mixture of like satire and sort of like poetry and storytelling. And so just having, and then after like the performance, like, you know, she invited like my mother and I out to like dinner with like her and her sisters. It was just like this like mind-opening moment where it was like, oh my God, here are like these like Indigenous theater artists who like live in like Greenwich Village, and like who make theater and art in this place called New York City. And oh my God, that's like what I want to do.
wow.
So being able to like end up in New York, and I'm like designing, you know, a costume for her, like it was just like, I was, it was definitely one of those moments where I was just like, this is so full circle. Like, if you would have told me, like, you know, when I was like a tween or a teen, that that's what was in store for me, like, I wouldn't have believed you. I'd have been like, how is that even possible? Like,
Oh, thanks for sharing that. That's so touching. That's so great to hear that.
Yeah. So this was Devilfish. That was from Perseverance Theater.
Wow, these are just really distinctly different from your last design concept pieces.
So the play was about like the creation of the Raven clan. And so the story is that there was like a tribe from the South that came up north to Alaska, sort of escaping like a environmental catastrophe. And then when these two groups met, then they intermarried with each other to create one of the Tlingit clans. And so a lot of Vera's like, she did a lot of research when writing the play. So like, you know, the aesthetic of, you know, the Eagle people was very much of the Southwest, because it was sort of like, and then when you go into like the, I guess, the history of like linguistics, it's like part of like the Athabascan culture and like language group. So it was like, I was just telling somebody about this the other day. I was like, it's like when I went to, you know, when I went to Alaska to do this show, it was sort of like this sort of like moment where it was like, you know, there was, I guess there was just something, I'm like, is there something in my genetic memory that remembers? Like, you know, like, wow, that's, it's
Yeah,
such a, you know, sort of
so much
profound
around
experience.
memory.
And
You're,
so,
go ahead.
yeah, like, you know, there was like a lot to like delve into, because it was sort of like, in a way, I'm like world building, but then there's sort of like these like concepts and, you know, rules, I guess, of, you know, certain sort of pieces in the show. But, you know, one of the characters, you know, Fog Woman, I remember walking on the beach and seeing like all of this like fish skin, I guess, that the eagles would tear off. And then I kind of like would, you know, run back to the shop and sort of like start to create like motifs on it. And then one day Vera comes in and she was like, oh yeah, she's like, traditionally it's like Fog Woman is said to have like a cloak of like fish scales. And then I was like, what? I was like, that's what I'm doing. My own like attempt at, you know, sort of that. And so
is that felt? Are those circles?
Yeah, it's felt and like silk and net and abalone shell buttons.
Huh. And is the Devilfish Woman the one with the pink cloak on? Yeah, is
oh no, that's
different piece. Oh, that's Fog Woman, sorry.
Yeah, that's Fog Woman. Yeah. This was like the first time I felt like a complete artist, because I was like in the shop sort of creating, and, you know, all of these sort of like weavings and just this sort of like fabric art in a way. Yeah. And then putting that like into the design.
Yeah, the weaving, man.
And then I'd like go out to like the river, or I'd, you know, go out to the woods and kind of like find the answers to like these sort of design questions. It was like just like this whole like all-encompassing experience of having this time and having the space and materials to like do the, you know, tangible stuff, but then being able to kind of just like go out into the hills, which is something I mean, that's what I grew up doing anyway.
Were you,
you know, I had to be inspired by things that I saw.
Were you like were you in residence in a different location, or were you in New York and would go and leave the city for this to go to the hills?
No, I was on location.
On location.
In Juneau.
Oh, in Juneau. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Which was really, I mean, I was like really isolated. Because like when you're in New York, it's like if you're doing like 3 other shows in different theaters around town, you're just running between all of them. But then here it was like the time zone was like 5 hours ahead. You know, I didn't get good cell phone reception. You know, and I was like, landlocked. Like, so it was like, all I had was to be able to like kind of like focus on the creation of this show.
Oh, wow.
Um,
So the land really spoke to you in this.
yeah, yeah. And this was the second show I did at Perseverance. The first show was Whalesong, and that one's coming up. But what was really great about this was that, you know, Vera's family, they all did different different crafts. And so, you know, all the cedar baskets, they made all the cedar baskets and the hats, and the, you know, this crown is like something, a crown that unmarried women wear. And so we're able to kind of incorporate like the real stuff into the design of the show, which was like amazing. And even, you know, like the pelts and stuff that were used in specific like marriage ceremonies. We, you know, created like our own sort of like marriage blanket for the show, and sort of did what we needed to do theatrically to kind of like rig it. So like when it closes, it's like, you know, so it's like there were like magnets and buttons in there. But having like the stuff, you know, from like the playwright's Indigenous culture, like woven into sort of this more conceptual world that I was creating, I think was like such a fascinating mix to have. And, you know, theatrically as such, it's like me like knowing about like the importance of like our own sort of, you know, cultural material, our cultural objects, you know, it goes beyond like theater in a way.
Right, I was
So,
going to ask
you know,
if,
traditionally, yeah, so traditionally, like, you know, these type of marriage blankets are never supposed to touch the ground. And so, you know, for the backstage crew, it's sort of like, well, you know, if we're incorporating Indigenous culture on stage with, you know, authentic items, then we have to have like a certain protocol and respect on like handling that. And I've like heard sort of like horror stories of, you know, people being in situations where that wasn't the case. And I was just like, that's, you know, a case of people not like fully understanding, you know, this isn't just like fully just like showpieces, or, you know, it's sort of, these things have like, you know, a life of their own. They have like, you know, they like garner a certain amount of respect. So I guess just having like that nuance of protocol like instilled in me from being a kid, and sort of like knowing, okay, well, if there are like ceremonial objects or motifs, then you have to like respect them. So when Vera's father came in to help, you know, with the blanket, you know, I was in charge of like cutting out the felt for it. So I kind of just had my own sort of moment of, you know, ritual and respect of just kind of being like, okay, like I'm going into this with, you know, the utmost respect, creating this piece. Like it just kind of like, it just goes beyond like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it touches on yeah, that question that that we raised at the beginning, the difference between appropriation and appreciation, and coming, you know, I was going to ask around protocol coming from your nation and coming up to First Nations up in Alaska, the protocol, and then there must have been lots of discussion, or maybe not lots, but just ways in which coming together in the theater in which you were handling your various sacred objects or meaningful materials and things that you needed to talk about, or maybe it might have come forward in a different way if you'd not had not come from the place that you came from.
Definitely. So the devilfish refers to sort of like this like kraken, like octopus creature that wreaks havoc in the traditional creation story of the play. So Vera's family, you know, they carved like the cedar paddles and like painted them. They made like the devilfish mask out of carved cedar, and either sort of like, not to like put like a monetary price on it, but I remember earlier in the design discussions, I was like, if we're gonna have these things, it's sort of like we have to know what we're getting into with them. Like, it's not just a theatrical object.
Right. It's not just a costume. It has more meaning.
Yeah. So it just kind of made the world like that much more profound, and that much more special. And these were like all the different artists who contributed to the design world, the design landscape of the show. Which I think was amazing.
Yeah, the craftsmanship, the time, the energy.
Yeah. So with Whalesong, the playwright, she didn't want any cultural representation of her tribe whatsoever. She was like, I kind of, so for me, she sort of like gave me this sort of like almost like free reign in creating, what this world would look like. Because in the show, part of the, half of the part of the cast are whales, and so there's sort of the whale nation, and then there's the human nation, and so kind of just going into delving into these like motifs and these ideas, and like this sort of concept of like how whales have like some of them have like 200-year-old harpoons stuck in them, or they kind of like pick up this debris that is created by humans, and so like with this like sketch that I was like, how do I do this thing? I don't know. And I was like, oh, if we do like a coat and we do like a spine motif that kind of represents like a hump, and then maybe cutaway, and so this thing kind of becomes like a fins. I was able to just really jump into creating like this whole like language with like the fabric and like that idea of like the layers, and then I remember going back down to the beach and then kind of just seeing like these sort of like shells and like seaweed in the pools, and so I would like come back to the studio and kind of like make like these sort of like seaweed motifs, and then just kind of like looking at like the colors of like the water or like colors on the beach, and just going back to the costume shop and finding like bits of rope or like fabric pieces, and being able to just kind of like create like embroidery motifs, really kind of like for the first time helped me have like this like full artistic experience, because usually you don't have like so much time to spend with the piece.
Yeah.
And so
in comparison, how much time did you have for this piece as opposed to say a shorter turnaround piece, maybe New York or something? What was it?
Well, honestly, I think I like probably had like a week for Whalesong, and for Fish I had like 3 days.
Wow.
Because it was a whole combination of things, because it's like you're in Juneau, so like there are no stores in Juneau, like they don't even have a Walmart, it's like, so then everything had to be like shipped in, but then everything takes like 2 weeks longer, like even with expedited shipping.
We're waiting, so you only have those short amount of time to pull it together.
Yeah, so that's why, so then when I had that time for Devilfish, I just spent that time like workshopping like ideas with the motifs and like playing with like fabrics and kind of like figuring out what is going to be like the embellishment or the idea that's going to go on top of that. And the difference between Devilfish was that it was the whole cast. With Whalesong, there was just like, the entire cast weren't you know, in this whale world.
I see.
So
It's a
yeah,
section.
so there was sort of, yeah, so there was definitely kind of more time to just kind of like play with painting and dyeing and, you know,
kind of going, iterating and coming back to it. And,
yeah.
mhm.
And but this was a exhibit that they put together at a school that I went to in California. Stages of Engagement, Indigenous Bodies, and Colonial Theater Tradition. And so after Whalesong was completed, it was like, okay, pack it up and, you know, we're going to put it in like an exhibit.
Great. Have it exhibited that way. Have more time with it, because stage productions just have a short lifespan. I mean, unless most do, a few plays and larger productions go on, but that's so great that you could exhibit this beautiful work. Such powerful.
Yeah, so it was kind of being able to like revisit again, and like, you know, it's like, wait, how did we style? Like, okay, she had on like, you know, the headpiece and, you know, the arm pieces. But it really delved into this whole aspect of like sort of fabric art. And I mean, I could have spent like a whole month just working on one costume, like, you know, but as such with theater, it's like, you know, the scheduling, it's like, all right, things are about to happen fast. Go into check.
Do you still have the pieces? Do you still keep them, or?
I think these are all
At the theater. Oh, at Perseverance. Yeah. Hmm.
And this was a show that I did over the summer. So it was sort of like my first show in, you know, the pandemic era. And so it was like a very, so at Thompson Highway's The Rez Sisters. Little random story. So basically, I guess Stratford, it was like at the end of the process, they were like, okay, we need like a full set of designs because, you know, they archive it. They like archive everything for a show. And in the middle of the rehearsal process, I had resketched the whole show because like I was supposed to do this show in like 2020. So then it was like pushed back to this, you know, this past July.
You totally revised.
So that I like resketched the whole show, and all I had was like this like notebook paper.
Oh,
and yeah. And then I was like, I was freaking out because I was like, oh no, I have to like erase all the lines, and then, you know, and then I was just like, no, this is like Rez Sisters. It's like when you grow up on the Rez, it's like you use whatever is there, like, and you just fully embrace, you know, the chaos of that or what have you. And so I was just like, we're gonna keep it on the notebook paper. I think that is very like, you know, befitting, you know, where it's like, what do I have around me to kind of like, you know,
that's great.
And so this is, yeah. And working on this production, it was like such a collaborative, as much as it could be in COVID, because we were so much within our own sort of pods. And, you know, my first round of fittings was like in a field in like a tent, you know, because we all had to be like so isolated and, you know, yeah. And then by our final fittings, we were finally like back in the theater space. So a lot of things had to happen sort of like via Zoom or like talking about the ideas. And so kind of, you know, it was sort of like this like ever-changing process where, okay, we're in this like new era of theater making. Like, what does that mean from, you know, COVID protocols, COVID testing to, okay, how are we gonna like shop things? Like what, okay, like the stores aren't open yet. Like, okay, they open in another maybe like 2 weeks, and then we'll like get to like go into a store or go like thrift shopping or vintage shopping. And I think all the ports in like Toronto had been like closed. So it was like ordering things online. It was like kind of being in Alaska. So it was sort of like, okay, I kind of know this drill, but it really was sort of just like rolling with the punches and sort of, you know, taking all these things, like, yeah, taking all these things into consideration.
Yeah, it looks like did you purchase a lot of things or make certain kind of blending of buying? And
it was kind of like everything, you know, it was like finding things in stock. The stores like finally opened, but then also like making whatever we like knew we probably couldn't find. It was, I think it was like a good segue back into theater because, you know, like Stratford is such like a small community. So it's like, we were sort of able, I mean, we were very much within our sort of like own like pods, our own bubbles. And while it was like kind of sad, because, you know, the thing about theater is like, you know, it's much as about hanging out with everyone after rehearsal, or like after the run.
Such a social aspect.
Like, yeah. There was like less of that sort of in the beginning, but then as things, you know, got more opened up and, you know, more people were getting vaccinated, we were able to kind of have like a little bit of that towards the end, which was great. But so then rehearsal was like out, like, you know, on a farm, like, you know, outside of town in like this big tent. And so for me, that was just such a, because I'd basically been in like my apartment in Brooklyn for like most of the year. So being able to like go out to the country and just like wander around like the woods and fields and look at like bugs and like flowers, you know, that I realized I'm like, this is something that's really important to me, to be able to just kind of like go and lose myself in nature. Because, you know, going back to like that reflection, it's like, it's like, hey, that's what I did when I was a kid. It's like, hey, Lord, let me just go like wander around the hills, like,
touch the grass, smell the air and the wetness of the ground and the bugs and the
yeah, my friend Sophie didn't like the bugs, so I was like the bug wrangler. There were all these like snails and caterpillars, which I thought were really adorable. I was like, oh my god, you know, so I would come and, you know, sort of like pick them off her stuff and, you know, take them like back to the woods. But yeah, and then also being back in an environment with, you know, Indigenous theater artists, and kind of just, you know, it's like we're in this thing together. We're like creating this world together. And even though we couldn't be together as much as like we wanted, sort of like socially and outside, you know, of the rehearsal room, I think it really just like hit home, just sort of like, I think maybe sometimes in like the fast pacedness of, you know, whatever we're doing in the theater, maybe we kind of forget that it really is about being with each other and creating things together. I sort of, like during one of my fittings, I kind of had like a little, I don't know what to call it, not like a mental break, but I just was like, you know, the drapers were there and like the costume team was there. And I was just sort of like, I was like, I had this realization. I was like, if you put us under a microscope, it's like, we're like organisms creating this, not like a false reality, but a reflection of reality that we then project and display for other organisms. I was like, if you put us all under a microscope, you know, the scientists would be like, oh, look here, this, you know, that team's coming together. They're creating like this false, yeah, they're creating like this, you know, simulated world for a whole nother group of organisms who will come in from the outside to then sort of like gather around and see what is being presented. And we kind of just like had like a good laugh about it, but it was just like amazing to be around a team again, first of all, and then also a cast.
Yeah, to feel that we are communal organisms, and we do want to project ourselves out to be seen, and to be seen in community is part of who we are as humans. And being so isolated for so long, I think made it was so hard. I mean, is there an aspect of being particularly, say, in a Indigenous centered production space that feels different, or that you respond to, than being in a space that's not centered around that community or ways of
I think doing like, especially when sort of creating like characters, Indigenous characters, I think that understanding the nuances of what I grew up seeing or what I saw in my community, and kind of like going into like another territory and kind of just being like, you know, seeing how things like link up, how things are the same, or maybe how things are slightly different. But I think that, you know, on a very basic level, there is like that connection.
Yeah.
There is like that sort of nuanced understanding of the community that you don't really have to like sell to anyone, or you don't have to like, you know, over explain yourself, because it's like you just like with each other, it's like you get it, you like sort of understand, you know, that maybe that aspect of the storytelling of, you know, the creation of the world. And so I always know that I get it right whenever, you know, especially if it's more of like creating like a specific character, if somebody like freaks out because I made them look exactly like their mother or their aunt or like a relative, I'm like, nailed it.
Yes.
Nailed it.
That's so great. Yeah.
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 So I think this is my last slide.
Okay.
I
Well,
found the
photo. Perfect timing. We've got 20 minutes for Q&A. So yeah. Tell us about this, or why you picked it for your last image.
So basically, there's like a whole other aspect of what I've been delving into, which is sort of looking at like gathering like photographs and images from, you know, the late 19th, early 20th century of just like Indigenous fashion, like in transition from sort of like, I guess like pre-contact, pre-colonial traditions, and that sort of like transitioning into the 20th century. Because what's so different now that I realize is that, you know, people have photographs like at home that, you know, they snap and they like put on Instagram. Like I found this photo like on Instagram, and you know, there's so much that don't exist in academic collections or public collections. Like there's so much
albums and
personal albums, or like, oh, I found these like old like, you know, postcards of this native family, and you know, I'm from Oregon, so I think that they're, you know, this tribe or whatever. So this kind of like, this kind of came out of like, you know, that sort of like stock that I found, and I was just like,
Asa, you've frozen. I think we'll see if Asa comes back. Let's just wait a second. We might have to have Asa come back in to the space. Just a minute. Hang on, everyone. I'm just going to reach out to Asa. And I think Asa's gonna enter the space again. As we're waiting for Asa to come back, if you want to take a moment to add some questions to the Q&A, I see we've got a fair amount going here. And we'll just take a moment to have Asa join us again from New York City.
Hello.
Hi. No worries.
Hi.
Yeah. Great. So I think we're going to go into the Q&A. That was perfect timing. And you're back. We have a lot in the Q&A, so I'll see what we could get to. Sorry, everyone, we probably won't get to everything. Leah asks, who has been one of your biggest inspirations in the field of costume design? Maybe besides your grandmother.
I know. I think really, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think on one person would be Gilbert Adrian. He's the reason I ended up at Parsons. He was a costume designer for the Wizard of Oz movie. And he graduated from Parsons in like the 20s, I believe. And so that was, I guess like he was sort of like a little bit later on where I was like, okay, there's something about Parsons. Like there are these different costume designers that I like love and respect their work so much, and they've gone to Parsons. Should I go to Parsons? And what is there? Is there something that I need to like learn there? So Florence Klotz and Gilbert Adrian were pretty important once I like came to the East Coast and was trying to figure out, you know, my trajectory. But I really think that Maria Bjornson, who she designed the Phantom of the Opera musical, that really was sort of my first, I guess, taste of like, oh, this is a person working, you know, now, who is a costume designer. And, you know, at that time, it's like all my friends were obsessed with Phantom of the Opera. And, you know, it was like one of the first like shows that I had seen, professional shows that I had seen, like a touring company that came to, you know, Phoenix. So it was like school trip to go see the tour of Phantom of the Opera. And it was like, so just kind of like, basically her whole process, like everything she did, I was just like, oh, like,
Do this.
I mean, there was a point when, I thought costume design was like an archaic career that died out with the Hollywood studio system.
But then you saw like, the living piece of theater and you met this person who's doing this in the real world, and that had an influence on you.
Yeah, it brought it into like, you know, the modern era for me. And I was like, oh, this is like a thing that I can do. But,
thanks. Okay, we got another one from James here. Some questions here, several in a row, about the demarriage cloths that come together, and curious what the meaning of the print was of that design, if you know, because it was designing of maybe the robe. It had an eagle print perhaps on it.
Yeah, there was an eagle and a raven.
A raven.
And so it was that idea of like those two groups coming together.
Oh, okay. So the two different.
Yeah. Yeah. And Vera's father, who's a traditional artist, you know, he basically like he drew it out, you know, on the fabric for me, and then I was and then I had the responsibility of like cutting it all out. I was like, you know, which is why I was like very like overly cautious with like the protocol and just like having, you know, that communication with, you know, the art, the creation of just being like, okay, I'm not a traditional Tlingit artist, but I humbly am here to help, you know, facilitate like the creation of this piece. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Okay. Lots of questions around where Indigenous theater might be headed, and what do you think about the future of Indigenous theater? And Ting brings up any thoughts on that. It's a big topic, obviously, but
it's really interesting because, like, I don't know if anyone's seen the show Reservation Dogs, but that's kind of like been this sort of big moment, you know, in Indian country, where it's like brought in, you know, the focus and the viewpoint into this century, into this moment. So for me, I'm kind of thinking, I'm like, I wonder, because so much of the, you know, pieces that I worked on were kind of like, I guess, reflective on like the past, or like how has the past, how is that connected to like who we are in this moment? So I'm just kind of wondering if that's going to sort of open up the storytelling of, you know, having more sort of like modern representation in theater of, you know, the Indigenous experience. So I guess I wonder if that'll sort of like, you know, trickle into sort of like the theater world.
yeah, right.
Yeah,
Coming from television into theater and vice versa. I wonder too, you know, working in a theater department as I do, you know, do you think there's a role, and you've done some work in educational settings for, you know, coming into spaces that are more in academia, and ways in which theater could be produced, or cultivating more Indigenous practice designers, playwrights to, you know, be in residence or to set work on students? Do you think that might be an interesting avenue to pursue? I know obviously Yale's doing some things and other schools, but maybe more.
Yeah, I think that it really comes down to the fact that, you know, what burgeoning theater artists in Indigenous communities, like who doesn't have access to like different spaces and resources to kind of like develop, you know, and hone those skills. Because obviously I think there's, I mean, this is like a whole nother, you know, topic, but I think kind of not holding, you know, somebody's like academic achievements, you know, higher than what like their artistic potential could be. So, you know, I mean, I'm not, I think it comes to, you know, anyone who's in the power to facilitate any type of artistic growth for an Indigenous theater artist, sort of taking out like an aspect of, I don't know, like, oh, the person, somebody has to be accomplished, you know,
I see.
or hit these milestones in order to like
certain kind of regional theater, or some milestones that would be expected or something to open up, yeah, who is invited and
yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, there was like an aspect of me where I was just, you know, at one point in my life, I'm like, well, I need to go to all these fancy places, you know, because then people will listen to what I have to say, or it'll kind of like maybe make getting work like easier, you know, which I think is just, I mean, I kind of like bought into that, you know. And obviously like on some level it worked, you know, but I do realize it's like, well, that's, you know, don't put your like entire faith in that.
Mm.
You know,
Thanks for that
yeah,
reflection.
that's like a whole nother like 5-hour conversation.
No, it's great. It's an important one to keep having. I appreciate your openness with that. This maybe one or two more, but this is kind of a personal one about just motivation. And have you ever struggled with being blocked or not having motivation, and how do you work past that? I think Jackson is maybe an artist themselves. I'm not sure, but how getting through blocks or things you might do as an artist, or practices like going out in the land or walking, or things that might inspire you when you feel like you're stuck.
I kind of, because the thing is, like, I don't know if the word is like, I think I have like too much gumption for that. I just growing up. I think it's sort of been like the opposite, because growing up, at Big Mountain as a kid, it's like the dog days of summer. It's like the longest, most boringest, scenario for like a kid who wants to like watch cartoons and who wants to, eat candy from the store, have like these bright, exciting things like constantly happening. So there really was just this like attitude, I guess, that I developed, where it was like, oh my God, there's nothing happening. We got to make something happen. Let's go cut up all those clothes and let's go like make scarecrows, or let's go build little like, villages, like out by the, sheep corral. Let's come on. I guess one of my cousins like reminded me, because like my mom like recently saw her and she was like, what was it like, growing up as kids out there? And my cousin was just like, she's like, Asa saved us with his imagination. Like, it was like never boring. There was, it was always something. It was always like, let's go, let's go.
Tapping into explore. That, the imaginative spirit. Yeah, that's great.
And so flash forward to my life now, it's been inverted. It's sort of like, go walk around in the field for half an hour. Go like embrace the quietness, embrace the slowness.
Take the slowness. Maybe take some time where you're not doing. I see. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I guess in the theme of the talk, renewal and reflection, the quietness and having the moment to do that is just as important as, hitting the streets and getting the work done, and just it constantly, be going. So in this sort of coming back to the work, I feel like I've been more adamant, like if I need time, if I need a little stillness in my process, I'm not shy or ashamed to ask for it. If I'm like feeling tired or like overwhelmed, I'm just, I'm no longer trying to hide it and like push myself through it. It's sort of just like, if I need this time, I need this time. And if you want to work with me as an artist, that has to be respected. Because don't worry, I'm going to get the thing done. Like, I signed the contract. I've already spent the money. So I don't know if that comes from like me like being more confident in knowing that I'm able to accomplish things. Whereas I think when I was younger, I probably, whenever I did a show, I think it was always just like, I don't know if I'm going to pull this off again. How am I going to pull this off again? And so after, working at it for almost 20 years, it's like,
you can trust that you can pull it off.
I can trust that I can pull it off. And I can trust that, even if I have a deadline, if I want to go to the park or if I want to go to the museum for an hour, you know, that's like really important. There's a lot of stuff that you can discover in the silence, in the stillness. But I think that respecting and honoring the fact that, you know, we all need to have those moments of renewal for ourselves, as, you know, even if we're not creative people, you know, even if you're not an artist. If I was like an accountant, you know, I think I'd still come to the same conclusions, hopefully, where I'd be like, you know what, I'm gonna go find like a pond and just look out into the water. You know what I mean? Like just,
yeah.
Those
are great. That's great. It's a great way, I think, to close, because we're just about at time, and it's just some really wise words and really important to take time to reflect. And, you know, Asa, thank you so much for taking us through your journey, for sharing those beautiful pictures of your childhood and your family and the elders in your life that had such impact with you and your grandmother, and taking us through your journey a little bit to get a sense of what it's like to be working in the theater right now. And we're so honored to have had you as a guest. And it's so strange in this format because we can't stay and chit chat after or do any of that wonderful stuff that you can do after a talk. Take you to dinner, as we would love to. We'll have to host you in person and have you come and speak with us again, because it was so rich and amazing to have you here. And then we'll host you and pet you and celebrate you as we should, for your incredible contributions and what you've shared with us. So, and many people in the chat are writing, thank you, amazing talk, wonderful. So just so you know, lots of great responses for what you've shared today. And yeah, any final words before we?
Gosh, I think the last thing I said is like, maybe I want to end on that note, but thank you for having me. Thank you for, you know, just being able to facilitate this conversation. I think it was a good reminder of you know, hey, it's good to remember like where you've come from. It's good to, you know, have a sense of like where you're going and like who you want to be, you know, because even at this point in my life, it's like I'm still figuring all that out. And I think yeah, even in the middle of having this conversation, I've had like my own realizations. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, it's good. It's like, oh yeah, I have been going at like breakneck speed for so long. It's good to have the quietness and the stillness. It's like just as important. Okay. But yeah.
Well, I know I'm going to take that to heart. I really felt into that for myself as an artist maker too. And we really, really hope to have you again, and would love to host you here in person. So thank you so much. If you could hear us applaud, the audience would be applauding. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening, Asa, and appreciate it.
All right, bye everyone. Thanks for coming by.
Yeah, bye.